Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Ray Espinoza. So if you're coming over from part 1 of virtualization, which is installing our type 2 hypervisor, which is VirtualBox, then welcome back. This is part 2 and the final part of virtualization. In this video, we will learn how to install our very first virtual machine, which will be Windows 10. Without any more rambling, let's get right into the classroom. Here we are. The first thing you guys want to do is you want to travel to the land of Google. Here, what you are going to do, you're going to type in Windows 10 space ISO file. And what you want to click on is download Windows 10 disk image ISO file right here. It's from a Microsoft.com website. Click on that. And this is what you want to download first, is the create Windows 10 installation media. So download now and then hit open. Yes. Is. Let me give you guys, there we go. All right, now we have a dark background. Okay, so we're going to accept the license and terms. Remember, if it seems like I'm going way faster than you, it's just because I'm cutting out all the static waiting around parts so you guys can have a shorter video. But if I'm getting too far ahead of you, just pause the video and catch up. Do not upgrade. We're going to create installation media. Hit next. Now here, if you have the option to use the recommended options for this PC, go ahead and select it. If you don't have this option for whatever reason, then make sure you just select Windows 10, which is the only one we can, and 64-bit version, just to follow along, okay? Hit next. Select ISO file. Next. And then find somewhere to save it. Okay, so what I would recommend you do is you create a new folder. For example, let's call it, we'll call it, for example, virtual machines. New folder, we'll call it Windows. This is just what I have on my host machine, right? And that way you got it separated by OS versions, okay? But go to Windows and then I will call this Windows 10. Oh, Windows 10, hit save. Okay, so again, you have a clean slate right here. What you want to do is go to new and we're going to name it. I like to keep the name of the OS at the beginning, followed by, you know, whatever version I want to call it. So in this case, it's Windows 10. And now something to keep in mind at the bottom, just because the application is tracking what you're typing in, notice how it auto-populated the type and the version for me. So if I'm gonna type in, let's say Ubuntu, it changes it automatically to Linux Ubuntu 64-bit. If I type in Debian, changes it to Linux Debian 64-bit version. So again, I'm gonna type in Windows because it's a Windows 10 machine. Call it Final Labs key again. All right, so select the folder that you want your machine to go to. Do not select the ISO image yet. We're going to leave it unselected. Hit next. Now, to go back to part 1, okay, it's imperative that you know, to a certain degree, it's important that you know the limitations that your host machine has. In other words, do you have enough CPU? Do you have enough storage and memory to allocate however much resources you want to allocate to your virtual machine? Because while it is a virtual environment, it's actually going to utilize real resources from your host machine, okay? So at the end of the day, if you don't know how to do that, which you just click on your taskbar, go to Task Manager, and then you go to Performance. Okay, this graph will give you somewhat of a representation of how your machine is doing. But if you look here at the icon, let's just stay on the green, right? Green is good, red is bad, obviously. Okay, so I'm gonna give it 4 CPUs just because I can. Hit next. You're going to create a virtual hard disk now. Disk size, I just leave it at 50 gigabytes. Hit next. And this is a summary of everything that we just did. Hit finish. Now let's launch it. You can either double click the lab or you can just hit this green arrow. And this is the part that'll probably take the longest. Your machine might restart a couple of times. And all that this is doing is it is installing Windows from scratch. Okay, so now it tried booting up and it wasn't able to because we didn't select the ISO file. So when this pops up, you're going to hit this drop down and select other, and you're gonna go to the location that you saved the ISO file that we just downloaded. Okay. In my case, since I've already downloaded it plenty of times, I'm just gonna go from right here and hit mount and retry boot. Okay, hit next, install now. This is for the most part pretty self-explanatory, but there are a couple of features or options that I will need you to select in order to be able to use this function. Here, select I don't have a product key. You can close this out. This is one of them. You want to make sure you select Windows 10 Pro. Some of these, if you select it, then what will happen is you'll end up with just the command prompt. You won't have this GUI, the graphical user interface. It'll just be a command prompt. So make sure you select the Windows 10 Pro and hit next. Accept the license terms and hit next. Custom install and hit next. And now we wait. Everything that's happening right now, some of you might be younger than I am, quite possibly so young in fact that you may not know the process that it used to take to install Windows. Okay, so this is what we're doing. A lot of PCs and even laptops nowadays, they don't have disk drives. Okay, and I'm talking like this one right here. You see that? That's on a tower PC, and you would open up this disk drive and you would install one of these disks from Microsoft. And so it used to be this like this one right here, right? You open it and there'd be like a disk for each one of these applications, and you go in and install each disk one by one so you can load up all these applications. Okay, and that is what the ISO file is that we just downloaded from the Windows website or from the Microsoft website. Oh man, I could have. This is some RAM. I got RAM right here. I don't know why I didn't show you guys these sticks right here. All right, guys, here we go. Now, these next few ones, it's up to you, whatever you want to choose, but I'm going to stick with good old United States. US for the keyboard. I'm going to skip the extra layout. Okay, these next few steps, please follow along for sure. How would you like to set up? Set up for an organization. Hit next. Down at the bottom left, select domain join instead. Name, I just like to keep it simple, admin. Hit next. Now, password. Okay, look, I am a strong advocate of having long, complex passwords. I'm all about that for sure. But for virtual reasons or for training purposes, it doesn't matter, right? If you want to do something like this, that's cool. Okay. Again, for training purposes, it doesn't matter. So because it doesn't matter in this particular case, I'm not even going to insert a password. If you do put a password in, you're going to have to do 3 security questions in case you got to reset your password. So go ahead. In my case, hit next. I'm going to turn all of these off. Hit accept. Skip. Not now. Hi again. And while we're waiting for this to take place, you might be asking yourself, well, what am I at my level, at the most beginner stages of IT, am I going to do with all of this? Well, that's the beautiful thing, right? The possibilities are endless. Let's say you want to make some changes to your host machine, right? You're like, what would happen if I deleted this file or whatever? Well, instead of causing some serious damage to your host machine, instead launch one of these virtual machines and try it out on there, because again, anything that happens to these machines, it doesn't affect your host machine. Okay, and more on that here in a moment. Okay, now let's fix the resizing of our machines. If you go up here to the top where it says devices, select insert guest additions CD image. Okay. And then go to File Explorer, which is the folder down here at the bottom. Click on this PC. Once this pops up, the CD drive, double click and select AMD 64. Hit yes. Next, install. We're gonna have to do one more reboot, but it'll be well worth it. Reboot now, hit finish. As I was saying, yes, cause as much harm as you want to your virtual machines, and then you can just delete it and install another one. Or even better, stand by, just to make sure this thing works. You kind of have to close it in first and then slowly start dragging it out. And notice how it starts adjusting until you can hit full screen. And then if you really want to maximize, notice how I have two taskbars down at the bottom. If you go to view full screen mode, which is host plus F, you'll get this information box. Okay. Now it says, note that the host key is currently defined as right control. So if you're on Windows, it'll be the right control key plus F. You hit switch and now you're in full screen, just one taskbar. All right. If you want to exit, you can hit host plus F, or you go down here, hover at the bottom till this dialog pops up, or these options, and hit this right here, back in business. Now what you can do is you can just hit the X up top, or you can go and shut down like normal. Power, shut down, and it'll shut down the machine. Good to go. Now, if you don't want to go through those setup steps, then what you first want to do is, before you make any further changes, the first thing you want to do is you go to your machine, you right click, you want to select clone or control. Sorry, folks. Want to select clone. Okay. And then name it whatever you want to name it. You can name it clone. You can do something like, version 2, whatever. Select the path, select next, full clone, and hit finish. And I'm not going to do it just because I don't want another machine, but all it's going to do is just going to create it. It's not going to take as long as it did to set up this machine. It's just going to instantly set it up for you. Okay, folks, we are officially done with virtualization. So now that this Windows 10 is set up, just feel free to roam around within your virtual machine environment and just, do whatever you want to do. Just kind of have confidence in knowing that it's not going to cause harm to your host machine. Okay. But always remember which machine you're in. Okay. Your host or your virtual. Okay. It can get a little complicated sometimes. I got some editing to do, and I got to focus on some other projects for you guys and for my portfolio, which I will eventually bring you guys on board with my portfolio and show you guys what that's looking like. But have fun in your virtual worlds, and I will catch you guys on the next hilltop. Rain it.